Good. Once again, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to host you this afternoon as part of the celebration of our Faculty of the Month. This month, it has been Dr. Andreas Kudom. He is one of our finest senior lecturers and a dynamic researcher for that matter. He is a veterinary and medical entomologist, a senior lecturer, and then one that is also a prolific scientific researcher. Dr. Kudom has been with us for a couple of years, and this month we deemed it prudent that as a faculty or as a department, we should honor our faculty and the contributions they are making to science and knowledge in general. Today, he's sharing some of his friends and his collaborators with us. They are going to share with us elimination of mosquitoes responsible for malaria in Ghana. Are there any ecological consequences? And some of his friends that he will be joining us will be Dr. Fred Aboagye-Antwi. Dr. Antwi is a senior lecturer at the department at the University of Ghana, and a medical entomologist and parasitologist for that matter. His research interest falls on the broader topic of biology, evolutionary ecology, parasitology, medical entomology. He's worked extensively on malaria parasite fitness modulation of Anopheles mosquitoes, ecological immunology of malaria and Anopheles interactions. He's also worked on environmental stress responses of mosquito vectors of diseases and indigenous and traditional knowledge, traditional Ghanaian means of insect pest control. I think I like that one, the indigenous knowledge aspects. So we really are honored to have Dr. Fred Antwi with us. Dr. Fred Antwi is being joined by a very fine lady researcher, Hackett. Dr. Talya Hackett has her research interest also in community ecology, primarily using empirical field-based projects to examine broad questions about networks of interactions, particularly those that cross habitats or environments. This, she thinks, can apply to a wide range of a variety of locations. She has extensively worked in the UK looking at structure and function of multiple guides of plant-insect interaction at the landscape level across a mosaic of habitats, asking about species role in landscape scale networks and if having multiple habitats in the landscape are better for supporting pollination and pest control. I can see myself in the pollination. So it's a pleasure having you, Hackett. And Dr. Kudom, you have a rich resource to discuss this afternoon's questions. We will allow questions. You can ask any question you want, especially pertaining to the topic. If you have any query, you can send a question via the reactions and the chats. You can send your questions through there. If you also raise your hand, if you look at the button on your left or your right, sorry, you'll be able to find a number of options for you to ask your questions. So it has to be engaged discussion. It's an afternoon, it's a Friday afternoon, and we have to really enjoy ourselves. So this particular topic has been generated a lot of questions, even at the backstage. Mosquitoes. Everybody, when you hear that small animal's name, it sends some shivers down your spine. The key question is that I think last 2 years, GateNote.com made a very profound statement. Is that if you are ranking the deadliest animals on earth that have killed humans, you could look at freshwater habitats, especially the snails, killing up just about 10,000 people. You are looking at assassin bats also killing humans close to that range. If you look at snakes, they have killed just about 50,000. That is just before the pandemic anyway. You are looking at human-to-human murder cases. Globally, it's about 450,000. But when it comes to the deaths caused by mosquitoes, it ranges far beyond 700,000. Why is this particular organism so relevant to humans? Dr. Kudom, since we are celebrating you, you can start the discussion. Why should we consider the mosquitoes? So you can unmute your microphone, then you address us.
As you rightly put, their impact on human life is dramatic.
Wow.
Looking at even few cases or few diseases, when you take dengue, now is the rising disease. Then the ancient disease, malaria, though it has improved, if you compare it for the last 20 years. But if you permit me to give you some statistics,
please do.
Right now.
We really want to understand why are we so afraid of that small insect? I mean, there are bigger insects like the bumblebee, the xylocopes are there. But when you mention mosquitoes, it's like, why?
So in 2018, it affected 228 million people.
Holy God.
And 405,000 died.
Oh Lord.
And the pathetic aspect is that about 67% of that 405,000 people were children under 5.
Oh no.
We lost these children, 272,000 in 2018. And in Africa, the death and the cases, we contributed 93%.
Holy God, I am already shivering. I'm already shivering.
93% of all malaria cases we contributed. Then 94% of the death cases we also contributed.
Wow.
And even if we narrow it with the worldwide malaria cases, only 6 countries in Africa contributed more than 50%. So we are looking at Nigeria contributed more than 25%. Dr. Congo, 12%. Uganda, 5%. Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique, and Niger also contributed 4% to each. So these 6 countries contributed more than 50% of the malaria cases.
Wow. That's staggering numbers. These are staggering numbers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if we narrow even up to Ghana, Ghana contributed 3% to the worldwide malaria cases.
Wow, it's still a lot. Looking at the numbers you just mentioned. Dr. Fred, would you say that we have no need to fear mosquitoes? Our fear is baseless.
Well, I have a different opinion.
Okay.
Talking from the point of a parasitologist and an entomologist, I wouldn't say the mosquito is the cause of those deaths. The cause of the deaths are the parasites, which in this case, if you talk about malaria, it is the Plasmodium falciparum. There are other malaria parasites that are human. For example, Plasmodium ovale, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium vivax. And then we have the zoonotic malaria parasite, Plasmodium noelsii, and Plasmodium chabudi. So in a sense, in the strictest sense, you say that the mosquito is also a victim to the parasite.
A victim, dog. It can never be a victim. That small insect can never be a victim.
It just happens that in the course of taking its food, it
killed so many people in the world. How can you enjoy your food make everybody's life miserable? Bro,
yeah.
Should we still be afraid of that insect?
Yeah, but then, in a way, yes and no. Yes, because there are a host of pathogens that can be transmitted by these mosquitoes and cause death. Dr. Kudom mentioned dengue fever. Apart from that, there is yellow fever, there is Zika, lymphatic filariasis. These are all pathogens that are transmitted by mosquitoes in general. But if you strictly focus on the insect that transmits malaria, then it's Anopheles gambiae. I was saying that we shouldn't be afraid, in that presently all around the globe, scientists are trying to find ways and means of controlling these infections that are transmitted by mosquitoes. And when it comes to malaria,
that's a good news. We need to deal with that insect.
Yes, there's a lot of hope, in the sense that, well, there are vaccines being developed. These vaccines have some 30% efficacy. However, we can combine all these tools that are being developed, because no single approach can solve the problem.
Can give us the solution. So on that note, I want to ask Talya, the global contributions, which percentage did your area contribute? How much percentage did it contribute? Are you as scared as we are?
I mean, so I spend, pre-pandemic, I spent half of my life in Ghana.
Oh,
so probably more so, because I didn't grow up with it.
Okay. So it will be a concern.
Absolutely, but also with things like climate change, the ranges of Aedes aegypti particularly, but also Anopheles gambiae, is going to expand into Europe. I mean, we're already seeing cases in Southern Europe.
We are getting more and more warmer places in even temperate regions.
Exactly.
So that is where everybody is concerned. So you encountered a scenario in the hospital. You walk into a hospital, somebody you report you traveled overseas, somebody is not feeling, is having the chills and all that, and the first question they have you traveled to any malaria endemic area? Well, and then immediately you say yes, you see the countenance changes.
Yeah.
Is there a serious concern for travels in malaria endemic areas, especially where you know that we have mosquitoes in Europe as well?
I think so. I mean, I think it's something that you take seriously. Anytime you're going somewhere where you might be exposed to a disease or a pathogen or anything, you have to take it seriously if you're traveling there. But even kind of beyond that, we're all people, and just because something doesn't affect me personally doesn't mean that I don't care that it's happening.
That's true.
The fact that, I mean, even if I didn't travel to malaria endemic regions regularly, which I do, but even if I didn't, so for instance, right now I'm stuck under an impending second lockdown.
Oh.
But I'm still passionate about the work that we do and helping to create this malaria-free world, regardless of whether personally it would impact me.
So the question, Dr. Kudom, I want to ask, you mentioned 3% malaria cases. Are we doing well in terms of global reference? Are we doing well? Are we doing bad? What have we been doing different from the past?
Okay, so I would say both. We are doing well, but not enough. So, for example, in 2010, there were almost about 9 million cases in Ghana, with about 14,000, almost 15,000 deaths. Then up to 2018, you see that there was a decrease up to 6.7 million, with about 11.7 deaths. But the problem is, if you look at 2016, 2017, you will see that the malaria cases has plateaued, or it has leveled off. There is no more decrease. And 2018, there is about 8% increase. So it has leveled off and started increasing again. So this is a cause for worry. We're doing better, but now it's changing.
So did we do something that intercepted the trajectories, and then now we are not doing those things? What caused those disparities?
Okay, so there are a number of could be a number of reasons. One, the method or the control method is now facing some challenges. Like now insecticide resistance is setting in. And our vector control method is basically, or is based on insecticide. And if this is facing resistance from the vectors, definitely there is a problem. Then also when it's high and you are bringing it down, sometimes it's not that difficult. But when you get to a certain level, you need a number of different methods to crash it. And so, probably that is
over a period of a year, somehow we lost it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So is it that bad, Dr. Fred Antwi? Is it that bad in the country?
In a way, it's yes. Although the cases are going up, you realize that the deaths are quite manageable.
So if you don't die and you are sick, it's okay.
Well, but then it's a problem that is plaguing the whole world, especially places that are malaria endemic. As Dr. Kudom said, there has been tools that are used in controlling malaria. The main tools have been the use of insecticide-treated bed nets.
Okay.
But these bed nets, the chemicals that they contain, the mosquitoes are becoming resistant to them. Even the drugs that we use in treating malaria, they are also, the parasites are also becoming resistant to the drugs. If you remember, some time back, we used to use chloroquine. Yes. And then we moved to ACTs because the parasites were becoming resistant to the chloroquine. So it's gotten to a point where progress in terms of reducing the malaria burden has stagnated. It isn't that the number of cases and deaths are increasing, but no, it has stagnated. It doesn't mean that the current tools we are using are not working. They are working, but then we need to go a step further. We need to bring in new tools that will make it possible for us to drive down the malaria burden further. And that's what brings in other new tools such as genetic control and so on.
So I will come to that, Dr. Antwi, but I want to go to Dr. Hackett. Talya, would you say globally the differences in the species and possibly speciation ongoing could contribute to why we are not doing so well in terms of resistance? Ours are able to easily speciate. Is it possible?
I think the issue with the sort of the reduced effect of the insecticides is less about speciation in the mosquitoes and more about sort of the insects evolving the resistance. So it's the same species, they're just becoming more resistant to the insecticide.
So we are having a whole population, so, resistant treatments, or some members are able to develop certain traits that are allowing them to resist the chemicals?
Both. So some members develop the traits that allow them to resist the insecticide, and then they survive and they pass that trait on to their offspring. And then those offspring are surviving longer and having more offspring. And then it leads to the whole population developing this resistance.
So I want to bring us back. I think the discussion is to if we eliminate malaria, mosquitoes responsible for causing malaria in Ghana, are there any ecological consequences? Dr. Fred, will there be any ecological consequences?
We don't know for certain for now, in the sense that probably the ecologists amongst us will be in a right position.
I wanted to start from the the parasitologist, then move the.
Yeah. But then the thing is, are the mosquitoes beneficial in any way to us? We don't know for sure. So we need to carry out investigations to find out.
The mosquitoes are carrying a parasite for you at some point.
Yes, as of now, what we know is that they are detrimental in terms of their effect on us. But what about their effect on the broader ecosystem? That's something that we can't say for certain, that they are providing any ecosystem services.
So I'm sorry to cut you, but the issue is that there are checks and balances within ecological networks. And as a parasitologist, the mosquito is the host at some point in the life of this parasite. And then we want to understand, if we eliminate them, are we likely to have success?
As a parasitologist, I would say if we eliminate the mosquitoes, then the problem is solved.
Thank
because
you.
There'll be no vehicle for transmission. Yeah, once we get rid of the mosquitoes. Yes.
Thank you. So let me go to Dr. Kudom. Talya will be the last because I know she has expanded. She looks at the networks within the ecological area. So Dr. Kudom, if we eliminate the mosquitoes in Ghana, will we be free?
Also, I will also be looking at my small background in insect ecology. For now, as Dr. Aboagye said, we are not sure of their benefits, but a little ecology tells me fish and other invertebrates also feed on this larvae. But the question that maybe Talya will expand more is that if there are other mosquitoes, it's not one mosquito, there are several. So if the one causing malaria is not there, will other mosquitoes also serve the purpose? That this is what we also don't know. So as Dr. Aboagye said, we might need more investigation.
Okay, so on that note, Talya, they have all shifted it to you. If we eliminate the mosquitoes responsible for causing malaria, will we be free? Are there ecological consequences?
The short answer is we hope not. But of course, that's not a...
We bank on hope.
Exactly. That's no way to conduct science. So we think of this, and Dr. Fred brought up the term ecosystem services, which is sort of what the ecosystem can provide to us. But it's also what it's providing amongst itself that is important. So we know that mosquitoes take nectar from flowers as well, when they're, particularly the males, but the females as well. And so it's possible that they're pollinating. Now, you mentioned bees earlier, and bumblebees especially, are much more established, important pollinators. Yeah. So it's quite likely that the mosquito is...
supplementary pollination or something.
Exactly. It'd be very peripheral to any kind of pollination. It's unlikely that a plant will have evolved a tight link to one mosquito species and really relies on that heavily. But the fact is, we also don't know that until we look. Until we collect the data, we don't know that that's the case.
So is it a gap in literature that we don't know the ecological contribution of mosquitoes?
Exactly. There's very little known about really the specific interactions involved. So there's the pollination side. There's also, they're going to be prey to all sorts of animals. There's a paper that came out earlier this year in May that found that there's bat species that are specifically targeting mosquitoes around rice paddies.
Wow.
So it's possible, again, quite unlikely because they're very small and there's lots of other insects, but it's possible that there's a species of bat or bird or a gecko or even a spider or dragonfly that's relying on these mosquitoes for its diet. Or another concern is that it's not necessarily relying on these mosquitoes, but if that source of food is gone, it will shift to something else. It will have to shift to something else.
Yes.
And that something else is maybe something that's important. And so if, say, it's an important pest control agent that eats a locust, and then it has to shift in order to, it'll shift its dietary preferences or dietary needs, and then suddenly you lose this important pest control agent, or you lose an important pollinator. So that's broadly what we're looking at in Ghana. So that's what the Dr. Fred and Dr. Andreas are looking at as well, is working out all of these interactions, both pollination, aquatic, and terrestrial, in predator-prey dynamics and the sort of pollination dynamics, to see if you were to remove it, how would you be able to shift those interactions, and can we find an effect that they might, or some important role that they maybe are doing. And again, as I say, we don't know of any cases where there's something that really preferentially feeds on Anopheles gambiae or any plant that really depends on it, but without looking, we don't really know.
That would be an interesting research area. I think Dr. Kudom has been working on different settings and whether he could encounter certain species elsewhere. But I would want to go to Dr. Fred Aboagye-Antwi. Doc, you mentioned earlier about technology that is being advanced in the control of mosquitoes and malaria in general. Can you elaborate on a number of them for us, please?
Okay, so when it comes to genetic approach, there are two main streams. One aims at population suppression, that is reducing the population of the mosquitoes, or the vectors, not just any mosquito, but the major vector of malaria. And then the second approach involves population replacement. So replacing what is already in the wild with mosquitoes that you've developed in the lab that are refractory to malaria parasites. So the first approach, talking about population suppression, all that you want to do is to introduce a gene that will drive down the population of the mosquitoes. And if the mosquito population goes down, the mosquito of interest population goes down, then what it means is that eventually the mosquito numbers will not be enough to be picking up parasites from an infected person to an uninfected person. The other approach is creating a mosquito by introducing a transgene into
great mosquitoes. Oh, good Lord.
You create mosquitoes that are not susceptible to malaria parasites. So even if they bite somebody who has the malaria parasite, those mosquitoes will not get infected. And once they are not infected, if they bite a second person, they are not able to transmit anything to the person. In that case, you will have to find a way of replacing the wild mosquitoes that are susceptible to the malaria with the new mosquitoes that are not susceptible to the malaria parasites. So these are the two approaches. But one, in order for you to do all these, you need to have a drive. A drive is simply a mechanism of making sure that the gene of interest that you've created can be spread through the population without any hindrance. So this takes me to the gene drive approach, where when we talk about gene drive, we say that some genes, let me start from the point of the fact that some genes are always in conflict. So when you take any organism at all, it may have genes that will support the development of ovaries. It may also have genes that will be against the development of ovaries. It gets to a point where some of these genes may be having a negative effect on the organism as a whole. But in spite of the negative effect, they are still able to spread in the population at a cost to the organism. Now, for such genes, they are said to be what? Selfish.
Oh.
Because they are looking at their interest at the cost of the host, the bigger organism. Now, these selfish genes are able to maintain or spread in the population because they don't follow the normal trend. The normal trend is, for example, if you talk of sex determination, there's a 50-50 chance that you may have a child that is either male or female. That is Mendelian inheritance. But with selfish genes, the inheritance pattern doesn't follow the 50-50 rule. They can be spread at, say, 90 or 99% to 1% rate. I hope you understand what I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah.
So the geneticist exploits this selfish gene mechanism and use it to spread the gene of interest. So this mechanism of spreading gene of interest in a biased manner is what is called the gene drive mechanism.
Okay. Doc, I'm not intercepting, but the ordinary citizens we want to understand, why would you create more mosquitoes? Already we are suffering with the ones we have. Why would you create new ones? And then isn't it possible that over time, those ones you are now that are now not susceptible, over time they will build some level of susceptibility?
It's a very, very good question that you've brought up. So what we do is not, I mean, as researchers or as scientists, it's not really creating more mosquitoes. When it comes to all approaches that involves the release of mosquitoes, we work with the male mosquitoes. Now, the male mosquito doesn't bite.
They make noise. They make lots of noise. They won't even eat. They just make noise.
There may be a nuisance. Yes. So what we do is we try and engineer the male mosquitoes. And when you release it and it mates with a wild mosquito, it spreads the gene of interest to have the effect that you expect. Now, your second question was about what if you release a mosquito that is refractory to malaria parasites, and along the line, yes, it may be refractory to malaria, but then becomes susceptible to, let's say, a virus, HIV virus or something. So because of this, there's a rigorous regulatory regime that you have to adhere to. These are all, some are international, some are national, but there are strict biosafety rules that needs to be adhered to in the course of developing all these technologies. So all these potential risks are identified, and in the labs they simulate to see if they go into the wild, that is what is going on. So if there is any potential risk of that sort likely to occur, then the research will not go any further. It will be curtailed at that particular point. So be rest assured, there are biosafety regulations that are enforced to ensure that such things don't happen.
Thank you. So on that one, I want to go back to Dr. Kudom. Doc, in Ghana, are we having some areas more prone to malaria or mosquito infestations than others?
Almost the whole country.
Oh, so there's no place to run to.
Yes, almost the whole. It's only at the north that is a little bit seasonal. That during the rainy season is malaria cases go very high, and during the dry season it reduces drastically. But before, apart from that, the whole country.
So if I get it correct, ecological parameters play a key role in the distribution of the mosquitoes.
Yes, of course.
So
yes.
What would be the determinant characters here?
So rainfall.
Rainfall.
Yeah, so, for here, since temperature is uniform, the most important factor is rainfall.
So is it possible that in a particular year that we have prolonged rains, malaria cases will surge? Dr. Fred?
Yes. In years that we have prolonged rains, yes, malaria cases will rise. But then, in that case, if malaria, in certain areas where there is rainfall throughout the whole year, what we realize is that most of the humans over there have built up immunity.
Some level of immunity.
Yes, it will take us to a term that is currently in vogue, herd immunity.
You want to expose yourself to be sick.
But then, if you take the north that Dr. Kudom talked about, because of the seasonality, malaria burden or the effect of the malaria on the population is more severe. So there is something that we call, there are terms that we use: hypoendemic, hyperendemic, mesoendemic, and so on. If you take the north, because of the seasonality of the malaria, anytime there's a long period of drought and then the rains come in, the impact of malaria becomes more severe, because most of the population would have lost their natural immunity. And most of the time it's children and pregnant women who bear the brunt. So yeah, nowhere is safe.
Yeah. I was going to travel for a while. every quarter I have to take something. I don't know why either my blood is nice to them. Are some people more prone to mosquito bites?
Yes, of course. Of course, yes. Some people are more prone to mosquito bites than others. For example, what we know is that pregnant women attract more mosquito bites than others. It could be physiological. You know, pregnant women have a slightly increased body temperature. There are certain that they emit that attract mosquitoes. You know, mosquitoes use various cues to in feeding. For example, they use visual cues, they use thermal cues, they use tactile cues, and
it must be very acute. It must be very sharp.
Yes, of course, of course.
Really sharp, because by the time you lift your hand, the mosquito is gone. By the time it's already gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yes, all these cues I talked about, it varies from person to person. For example, what I know is that if you are dark skinned, they like the darker colors than the lighter colors.
Holy Lord.
Generally. And if you are hairy, obviously it makes it more difficult for the mosquitoes to land. So hairier people are less bitten than less hairy people. So it's a combination of all these that makes certain
then we
people.
Have to those of us who wax, we should stop waxing so that there'll be more hairs.
You see.
That's quite interesting to know.
Yeah.
Dr. Hackett, can you briefly describe how we can determine if there could be ecological problems associated with elimination of malaria vectors?
I can do my best. So
please do.
So what we're, and this is exactly what we're doing. So we're collecting data on these interactions using molecular metabarcoding.
Okay.
So there's a region of DNA in animals that is very well conserved within species. So all humans have a very, very similar section of this DNA. But between different species, it's quite different. And there's been a campaign for the last kind of about 20 years now to barcode all of this region and use it as a kind of library of species.
Wow.
So once you have this barcode library, you can then look in the feces or the gut contents of predators to find the fragment of that section of DNA and match it. So you have a library of insects, and then you have a list of DNA fragments, and you match the two, and you can say to the species level that this animal ate these 5 species. So once you have this, you've got these interactions for all the predators and prey that we think are in this community that we can collect the data on. And that's where these ecological networks come in. So you can then construct it, and it's a mathematical and visual representation of the community based on its interactions. And when you have that, then you can model what would happen if I took this one species out and gave the system some kind of rules for how it adapts. So does it shift all of its feeding effort onto one thing? Does it spread it equally across everything else? And you can run all of these different scenarios and really start to get at what the consequences would be through this mathematical model that's based on real data from the community.
Okay. That looks interesting.
So, and it's a large data set, but it's entirely doable with modern methods. So this technique wasn't around or affordable even 5 years ago. So wow. The technique has been around, but for it to be done on this kind of a scale, it's the first and biggest on this kind of scale that I know of.
So is this work being done in Ghana as well?
Yes, so we're working in 2 villages in the Volta region.
Okay.
I think as far as I know, it's still going on.
Yeah.
They're still going to the field.
Dr. Kudom can contribute to the discussion.
Yeah. So
how far are we with this technology?
So we are still at the data collection stage. So
okay.
Last week, when I was missing, I was at the Volta region.
I thought I didn't know it was for general mosquito.
Yeah. So we are still on.
Oh, good. So on that note, I wanted to find out, Dr. Kudom, if you look at, it's said that we are looking at about 3,000 species of mosquitoes. In Ghana, which ones are we likely to encounter here? Are there particular groups that are peculiar to a particular area? You said everywhere I go, I will find mosquitoes, but are we looking at species distribution more uniform, or some species are endemic to a particular place?
Yes, some of the species are distributed based on the ecology. So we will have some at the coastal areas that you will not find inside. Some prefer to breed in salty waters.
Oh, so they'll be along the coast.
They will be along the coast.
Oh, that's interesting.
Some also like to breed in places that are more dry. So you find them more at the northern part of Ghana and most dry areas. Some also they want forest or where there's rain, the rainfall is high. So these are, but they cut across, it overlaps a little bit. But you know that when you go to this dry area, this is the kind of species I'm likely to find. And when you go to the middle of Ghana in the forest zone, this is the kind of species I'm likely to find, though there will be some overlap.
So in that overlap, will that mosquito that causes malaria, the Anopheles, does it occur throughout the whole country, or it's a certain portion?
In fact, what I'm saying is the malaria vector.
Oh, okay. So yeah. You could find it everywhere in Ghana.
You could find it. Then the funny thing is, all this one big species.
Wow.
They are one big species with sibling species. So you find sibling species along the ecological zones in Ghana.
Have they existed in that context, or they have been speciating over the time?
Yeah, they've been speciating. So the current one, we used to have what that we call their molecular forms, but now they are actually
distinct species.
Two separate species. So there has been some kind of speciation ongoing.
So within the molecular forms, in a typical area like let's pick Cape Coast, are we likely to have the two coexisting, or you will have one more dominant than the other?
So Cape Coast, the funny thing is, at the coastal, along the coast, there is one that is dominating. That is Anopheles colosi. But when you just start going inward, so like at the peripheral, third range area, you see that the distribution now changes. Now you will have the Anopheles gambi sensu stricto.
Wow.
Yeah. Then still along the coast, you will get Melas, Anopheles melas. So all these species are in one big species.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so they are.
So I just wanted to shift back to Dr. Fredentry. Is it likely that these molecular forms, the transmission rates will be different in terms of how they host the parasites?
Yes. So this molecular forms, the sibling species that Dr. Kudom was talking about,
yes.
There are about 8 sibling members.
Wow.
Yes, not all the 8 are in Ghana. Oh. So in Ghana, we have the Melas that he talked about. We have Colusi, we have Gambi, we have Arabiensis. Oh. But we don't have Amharicus, we don't have Buambi, and the others, like Merus. So for all these 8, they vary in their vector competence.
Okay.
They vary in their vector competence. Some are better vectors than others. If you take Anopheles, is it quadrinellatus? It's not viewed as a major vector of malaria at all.
Okay.
But that one is not here with us. But for us, the most important vectors belonging to the Anopheles gambi complex are Anopheles gambi, which is sometimes referred to as Anopheles gambi sensu stricto, and Anopheles colusi. After these 2, then we may have Arabiensis. But then this is the gambi complex that we are talking of. There's another complex that also plays a role in malaria transmission. That is Anopheles funestus. And that one is also more common in the north than in the south.
Wow.
But they are in the south here too.
Wow.
So the argument is, okay, if you take Anopheles gambiae out, what if any one of these replaces it and even performs better?
That would be dangerous.
These are all issues that we are researching into.
Okay.
And we hope that we are on the right track.
Let's bank on the hope. Let's bank on the hope for now. But I wanted to find out, Talya, if as we alter the ecosystem, as humans manipulate the ecosystem, have we done well in the control of these vectors ecologically?
I mean, I think as a general rule, when we alter ecosystems, we tend not to do very well with regard to the natural world. As a race, as the human race, we do not do very well at that. But for Anopheles gambiae, it's quite tightly evolved with humans. The way you have humans and human habitat modification, you have lots of Anopheles gambiae, and that's probably to do with the larval breeding habitats. So what we as a byproduct of the way we live, we produce a lot of habitat that is really suitable specifically for Anopheles gambiae. So they quite like small breeding habitats that are quite clean. So things like hoof prints or car tires or water that's left out but is quite clean. That tends to be a really good breeding habitat for Anopheles gambiae. And Dr. Andreas knows much more about this than I do. But as a general rule, where you have people, you have Anopheles gambiae, and where you have fewer people, you have less. That's a kind of, we would say that's the general rule, but to be honest, there's not been a huge amount of research in how far that tracks. So how far away do you need to get from people before you start seeing a drop off in the numbers? And so we are hoping to do a little bit of work in this as well, to see if how tightly linked they really are to humans. But I'm not sure if that fully answers the question. It's not so much that it's our habitat modification has created this environment, as it is the Anopheles gambiae has evolved with us, so that we're very nicely matched. And that what we provide is both a series of food source in the terms of kind of nectar and breeding habitat, and then also a lovely protein source for egg development.
Thank you, Talya.
I wanted to chip in small thing that was left.
That's okay.
With the competence.
Okay.
One thing that was left out is also the behavior.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the different species also have different behavior.
Okay.
And the method that we use to control them, like the use of insecticide treated net, the indoor residual spray, is based on the behavior, because we know they bite indoors and they will bite us in the night. But some of the species is now biting us outside.
Mm-hmm.
And also biting very early before you go to bed. And this is also a big problem, that unless new method comes in, it's difficult to control such species.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we have been discussing elimination of mosquitoes responsible for malaria in Ghana. Are there any ecological consequences? It has been an interesting discussion so far. I have been joined by Dr. Andreas Kudom, Edichum Kudom, Dr. Fred Aboagye, and then Dr. Talya Hackett. They have done a lot of justice to the questions that bothered our mind. But there's a question by Joseph Kwesi Afifa. He said, Dr. Fred, I visit the forest a lot, and mostly I get bitten by lots of mosquitoes in the forest. My question is, why have I not had any malaria symptoms? In other words, are the mosquitoes in the forest, like Kudom National Park, not likely to transmit the malaria vector, or I am immune?
Okay.
Is he immune, dog?
No, he's not immune.
Sorry.
Okay, so you realize that the malaria vector, the Anopheles gambiae, has co-evolved with humans. And so they are mostly found where humans are. And they pick the parasites from other humans to transmit it to others. The ones you see in the forest, there are no humans living in the forest or nearby. And so are not likely to pick up the parasites from someone and transmit it to you. So I would say that those mosquitoes there in the forest have a very low chance of transmitting any malaria parasites to you. However, if they are to transmit any malaria to you, then that will be zoonotic malaria parasites. Parasites that they may have picked up from the animals that they bite in the forest and transmit it to you. So the reason why you're not getting any malaria, although you have so many bites, is it could be due to the fact that you're not even being bitten by Anopheles mosquitoes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, Mr. Afrifa, they said you are not immune. So, on that note, I want to ask a very personal question. Can mosquitoes transmit COVID-19?
No.
I just have to be sure. we are not living in chances, or we are yet to look at that aspect. Can they transmit? Now it's an air pollutant, and then it's also on surfaces. As they bite us, can they transmit it?
It's so I mean I'm probably the least experienced of the three of us to answer this, but it's a respiratory virus. It's in what we breathe, in the droplets that we breathe in and out, and not in our blood.
So it's not possible.
It's not transmitted through blood. It's transmitted through respiratory droplets.
So isn't it possible that it's a hairy insect, especially those males with those elaborate antennae? Can they carry it around, and as they make those noise around us, deposit it around us? Isn't it possible? Or it's a wild guess?
I don't know the dose of viruses that you have to be exposed to before you catch the infection. But the mosquito, assuming it's been coughed on by an infected person,
it will even die before.
Since we are in the pandemic, we have to be sure who is carrying what before we allow.
Yeah, there is no chance unless you inhale such a mosquito, which is not likely.
Okay, so we are almost rounding up, but I wanted to find out the last bit of my questions. If we eliminate these mosquitoes, are we likely to have some level of peace, some level of medical improvement, health improvement in the human population?
Yeah, so yes, we are talking of...
Collins, I will give you the chance, but let Dr. Fred answer this question for me.
Okay. So yes, when we eliminate the Anopheles gambiae, the emphasis here is on Anopheles gambiae. We believe that there will be such a massive improvement in the health status of the populace, in the sense that although we mentioned that there are several thousands of species of Anopheles, when it comes to malaria transmission, Anopheles gambiae alone accounts for more than 90% of the transmission here.
Wow.
So we may not solve the problem completely by getting rid of them, but it will have a very big impact on malaria disease burden in particularly Africa.
Wow. Thank you.
And it's also a matter of you don't necessarily have to get rid of every single disease transmitting mosquito, but you need to get rid of enough that and long enough that you break the transmission cycle. So because it goes through a cycle, you just need to break it in order for the parasite for us to get rid of the parasite.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. So on that note, Collins, you have the floor now. You can ask your question.
Yes, yeah. I think I've seen his question.
Yeah, you saw it. Okay, then I'll be. Yeah.
Whether immunity to malaria is transient or long term. It is actually transient. And if I mean, you and I, as Ghanaians, you've stayed in Ghana, you've been bitten by malaria carrying mosquitoes, and so you build some immunity. If you travel to go and live somewhere where malaria is not endemic, and you live there for like, say, 4 or 5, say 10 years, and you come back, you would have lost your immunity.
Oh.
Yes.
So I guess I've lost my then now.
And you will be at risk of getting severe malaria.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as you age, you get exposed to a wider variety or wider clones of the parasite. So you realize that when we were younger, we used to get malaria more often.
Yes.
But as you age, because you've been so exposed, you get malaria, and sometimes you don't even know that you've had malaria. But if you are not exposed for a long time, of course, you are likely to lose that immunity. And so I can use myself as an example. After my studies, when I came back, I hadn't had malaria for like almost 8 years, but then I had one severe
Those ones, they knock you into your bed.
Yes. So sometimes people argue that, okay, so why don't we stop using the nets, stop using all the interventions, and then build natural immunity, herd immunity.
Not for mosquitoes.
but no, the cost to be so severe. So we have to try as much as possible to make use of all those tools available to us.
Collins, I hope you are satisfied with the response.
Yes, I'm okay. So then, the follow up to that will be then how, if like we know it is transient, how is this taken into consideration when it comes to this vaccine development or vaccine data under development or research in this area?
So with respect to the vaccines, what it will mean is that you need to be going for boosters from time to time.
Oh.
It will not be just a one-time vaccine, a once in a lifetime vaccine, but you need to be going for boosters from time to time.
So if I may add, the one that they are testing, they are piloting in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. They assume that it will take about 4 years. It will have a lifespan of 4 years. Then you need to boost it again.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Thank you so much, Collins, for your question. If there are not any other question, we would proceed. My last to Dr. Kudom. What are the key challenges in the control of mosquitoes in Ghana? The key.
So the key challenges that we've talked about is resistance. Now, well, all the control tools is based on insecticide. And if the mosquitoes become resistant to, and surprisingly, the insecticide is only in a limited class. We have only the pyrethroids that is used in treating bed nets. And when they are resistant to one of them, it cuts across. So it's only recently, even some are yet to be approved, that a number of bird nests are coming with different insecticide treated. Then another major challenge is the behavior. Now, a number of them are changing their behavior. Since we are targeting them in the night, there has been change of behavior. Now they bite early before you go to sleep. They are biting outdoors. And the current tools are not meant for that behavior. So we call it residual malaria. It's increasing. So these are the major challenges with the current control tools.
Will we ever win this battle with the mosquitoes?
Okay.
So this is my final question to all of you. Will we ever win? We can
yes.
We can start. Any of you can start, and then give me your final.
Yes, I'll quickly add to Dr. Kudom's contribution and say that when it comes to resistance, we play a major role because we are not well informed, but yet we go to the market, we buy these insecticides, we see just a mosquito, and we spray.
It's mosquito.
Yes, but then we don't apply it properly, so it contributes to the buildup of insecticide resistance. As he said, there are other classes of insecticides outside the pyrethroids, but they don't smell good, so most people don't even want to use them at all. Yeah. Now, to whether we can win, yes. Otherwise, we should not be working on trying to control them at all. Yes, if we get together, if we get our act together, and we work hard enough, I believe that we can make a headway. Now, when we talk of COVID came just, it's not even a year old. But there's been a lot of progress because of the concerted efforts of the scientific community. So if we all put our acts together and we work together as a team, as a community, then we can make big inroads in the control of malaria. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Aboagye-Antwi. Dr. Talya Hackett, can we ever win this battle?
I mean, absolutely. And following on from that point, it's a matter of not one single thing will do it. It's using insecticide-treated bed nets, using indoor residual spraying, using the gene drive technology, making sensible choices about how we apply all of these, and being responsible for our own behavior. And it's all of these working together is probably enough, as I say, just to break the transmission cycle and really just we're so close. We've made such impressive strides over the last, particularly the last kind of 10-15 years. The numbers have really dropped, and Andreas mentioned it right at the beginning, and we're just now starting to see the impact of this insecticide resistance. And the genetic modified mosquitoes is the sort of the final push that we hope that will get control over the situation, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's
if we are contributing 99%, 90%, then it's a lot.
Exactly.
We really have to win this. So before Dr. Kudom comes in, there's a question, a lighter note question from Afifa again. He said he was told that people who do alcohol, or that means they take in alcohol, are unlikely to suffer from malaria. Is that true?
There's a first question before that. I think you missed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first question, so you can take the two at the same time. Any of you can handle it.
Okay.
Mauli says that I see these mosquitoes that have white stripes. They bite in the morning, noon, and night. I don't remember them 30 years ago. Are they vectors as well?
Yes. And 30 years ago they were there. They are called Aedes aegypti. They transmit the yellow fever virus.
And
Then the dengue.
Dengue.
Then even there are a number of arboviruses that they transmit. And they've been there. This is the mosquito that the Noguchi came from Japan to Ghana to look at it. So,
So it has given us a whole institution.
I must add that they've always been around.
Yeah.
But as a result of urbanization, we are creating more suitable breeding grounds for them. So their numbers are going up. Urbanization and also international trade, because some of them are originally from Asia. But then, we use a lot of these second-hand car tires.
Wow.
When those tires are coming, they hide in them and they come together with them. So these mosquitoes, the Aedes mosquitoes, they have these painful bites, and they bite during the day mostly.
Wow.
Yes, and as Dr. Kudom said, they are mostly vectors of arboviruses. And he earlier mentioned that dengue fever is becoming more and more of a problem in our part of the world. And
wouldn't one species intercept the control of another? If, for instance, I have been bitten over and over, and I'm not seeing any results, positive results, I would want to ignore the nets, and thereby wouldn't it intercept malaria control programs? These species said.
In a way, no, in the sense that these mosquitoes, as he rightly put it, they bite in the morning, noon, and night when you will not be sleeping under a bed net. These are day-biting mosquitoes. So we can't use the same approach as we use for malaria against them. We have to develop new tools for controlling these mosquitoes.
So within the malaria control program, you can't use one control method to cover all.
No, not really. If you spray, it helps. It has a synergistic effect on the other vectors around. But then, if you use something like a bed net, which is supposed to protect you from night-biting mosquitoes, it will not be effective against Aedes bite, because you are going to step out of your net and they'll be happily waiting for you.
Welcoming you. So, Dr. Kudom, before you come in and then give us the concluding statements, there's a question. Those who take alcohol, are they likely to have malaria or not? And then are we ever going to win the fight against mosquitoes?
What I know of is beer. I know even when you take more beer, you are likely to be bitten more.
Oh, rather?
Yes. So I don't know of alcohol and its impact on malaria. Yeah. So, but
are you going to win the battle?
I hope so, and I believe we can. But as we chase the mosquitoes out, we also need to look at our behavior.
Exactly.
Is one of the factors responsible for. So we have to chase both mosquitoes and also check our behavior. Then I hope we will be able to win.
On that note, we will be able to win. I would want to thank Dr. Andreas Kudom, Senior Lecturer, University of Cape Coast, Department of Conservation Biology and Entomology. Dr. Talya Hackett, University of Oxford, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Dr. Fred Aboagye-Antwi, University of Ghana, Legon, thank you so much. We have had such a rich and very insightful discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I am Rafala Kombi, your moderator this afternoon. It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Thank you too very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.